Hi everyone, welcome to 5 Day Snacks, your go-to podcast for insights on thriving in dynamic, fast-growing teams. Here, we aim to reflect, pause, and rethink our daily grind for a better, more human future. I'm your host Mansi, and today we are joined by someone who's redefining what it means to lead with empathy and scale with intent in the HR world. With over 17 years of experience, Vinay Trivedi is the global head of HR, admin, and travel at TerraPay, a global fintech innovator powering cross-border payments. Under his leadership, TerraPay scaled from 100 to 700 people in just 36 months, expanded from 4 to 35 countries, and built a workforce that includes 42 nationalities and 34% women employees. Besides being a strategic HR leader, Vinay is also a mentor, advisor, and a recognized LinkedIn top voice in HR recruitment and performance management. He is the recipient of the TerraPay Young HR Leader Award and the Exceptional HR Leader Award by BW People magazine. Let's give a very warm welcome to Vinay, a people first leader shaping the future of work with heart and hustle. Hi, Vinay. Thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the 5 Day podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I think it's going to be a fun conversation today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Without spending so much time, let's just dive directly into questions because I'm really, really excited for our conversation. I think one of the major questions that has been going over my mind because 17 years is a very impressive and a long career being in HR where I feel like empathy is one of the most important aspects of being an HR leader. So
Mm.
since you joined till this date, what was there like a specific aha sort of a moment in your career that really changed how you approach your work or it shaped how you approach your work?
Uh, this is a very interesting question that you've started our conversation with. A lot of us are in search of aha moments, wow moments, saying, okay, this is changing my career, this is changing my perspective, or this is where, I got a inspiration. Let's be real. You're not
Hmm.
going to find inspiration unless you go to Mount Himalayas for meditation. What
Right.
I know that's exaggeration, but what I mean to say is that boring consistency sometimes also gives you a lot of aha moments. For me, in my
Right.
career, what has happened is I have believed in the power of experimentation and trying new things. For me,
Right.
aha moments have always been when I have tried something new, um, possibly failed miserably or succeeded, but
Right.
try something new has always led to a lot of aha moments for me. Second, experiment. For the first 10, 12 years of my career, by the way, I only focused on taking any roles and experimenting. And that gave me a lot of aha moments when I started achieving things that I did not think I could do. So
Right.
my
Right.
advice is that you should try something new and you should experiment. A lot of people do not experiment. They're very scared of trying new things.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree. I'm also a very firm believer that a lot of times when you uh, do something, experiment, I think you end up surprising yourself because you are not really sure if you can do something. But when you actually put in the work and actually understand the thing you're doing, the results are likely to be really, really interesting. So I think I completely agree with you there. Yeah. Um, I think that sort of pairs it up with my next question, which is what advice, besides being experimental, would you give job seekers today to not just stand out in an interview, but generally have a more interesting work life? Like, what are some candidates that have been really memorable, or what is it that makes them memorable, in your opinion?
So I think again, this is a very often asked question. Everybody wants to know, how do I stand out in an interview, right? And I'm not going to say something that's going to be mind-blowingly different. What I'm going to say is, something which is very basic. If you're walking into an interview, at least know what your profile stands for. What I mean to
Right.
say by that is people tend to write 10,000 things on the CV,
Hmm.
but they do not remember half the things they have written themselves or got somebody else to write for them, whatever the case may be. You
Right.
need to know your profile well. One thing that excites interviewers or people who are looking at hiring managers is when the candidate knows what they've written or what they're saying. For
Right.
example, if you write that I've taken 3 certifications, okay, please make sure that you have at least 2 learnings per certification. What it will do
Right.
is when the interviewer asks you, tell me about the certification, your response, instead of saying that, oh, I did that 2 years back, I don't remember now, versus saying that these are the 2 learnings I had from the certification, you automatically tend to stand out. Most people do not know that. So
Right.
my personal recommendation to candidates when you're walking into an interview discussion is if you have a piece of your CV, make sure that you know every word, every comma, every full stop on your CV, and are able to explain that to the interviewer.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that makes complete sense. And it might seem like common sense, if I may, but I feel like sometimes people do miss out on really foundational things like that. One
Yeah.
more interesting thing I started doing in interviews is just like taking it a little more casually because I think it sort of relaxes your nerves and to stand out something like if an interviewer asks you hi, how are you, and which is a very basic question that an interviewer might ask in the beginning of your interview, and just saying something like, oh, I'm in a really good mood because I had a really nice lunch, or I was looking forward to this, so I did this before the interview, because that is something that an interviewer might not expect. They've been taking interviews all day long and taking talking to candidates all day long. So just having your foundations and doing one thing that might seem tiny but interesting would be something I think really really helpful to you, if I may.
Absolutely. I think we need to understand one thing. When you walk into an interview conversation, the interviewer is more worried than the person who's coming for interview because
Agreed.
he or she only knows you from what you have written in your CV. You know yourself
Yeah.
better than what you have in CV, and therefore, when you are relaxed in the conversation, the quality of discussion is lot richer than it is when you go uptight, being very scared. So even the interview is then going to be, closed, and will try to ask very specific questions and get done with the conversation and say, okay, next.
Yeah,
Be
absolutely.
relaxed. They don't know you, you know yourself well. That's the trick to the successful interview.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this sort of builds me up to my next question, which is you've built teams across 35 countries now, which is a lot of diverse, kinds of human beings you get to interact with. What is, you would say, a good foundation behind building amazing, diverse teams with people from different backgrounds and experience levels, because that is no easy feat to achieve.
Uh, I've never thought about, what's a good foundation to build. I just was working, building, working, building, working, building, working, building. And then when you look back, you realize, oh my God, now we are in 35 countries. The
Right,
trick is, to take each day as it comes. Now, a lot of people get very overwhelmed when you have to do things that you've never done. What has helped
right,
me is my attitude of experimenting and trying new things came to my rescue when I had to scale teams across the globe. Because, you don't know the country well, you don't know the currency, you don't know how increments are given in that country, you don't know how people, take you. For example, if I were to follow up with somebody in Asia Pacific, that is Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, they consider it rude. They think that you should not follow. Versus when you go to the
Right.
US, they are very aggressive and they do not mind you following up, or they will chase you if you have not responded to them, right?
Right.
So there are so many cultural nuances that you learn. There are so many ways of working that you learn. So what has helped
Right.
me build this is one day at a time, one step at a time, and not shying away from asking for
Hmm.
help, saying, "Hey, I don't know what this is. Could you explain to me?" Or say, "Hey, I don't know what your culture is." So I actually go on to conversations with candidates and I ask them saying, "Hey, I don't know if it's rude to follow up with you. Please tell me what makes sense." And then they'll tell me, "Okay, maybe two times is okay, three times is not okay." So you sort of get to know things. So that's what has helped me build this diverse, workforce that I'm very proud of.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. That's very interesting. So I think what I'd like to know in lieu of that is that how do you make sure that people from such diverse cultures, as we talked about nuances, people from such diverse cultures also have really diverse and different working habits, right? Like people are at the end of the day a result of their environment and their culture. So how do you, make sure that you help people that are from really diverse backgrounds in your team grow and reach their full potential, especially when everyone has really different goals and passions.
One thing that has helped, and which I often do when I'm recruiting people, or my teams currently now follow when they are recruiting people, is to set expectations of how we work as an organization. Now,
Right,
sometimes all it takes is to have an open conversation and saying, "Hey, these are the three things that are non-negotiable if you were to join the organization. These are the
right,
three things that we expect you to do if you were to join the organization." And when you're setting those expectations right, automatically candidates are fine-tuning their mind to get used to the organizational style of working.
right,
Second, when you start building teams, you start getting to know what is working in those countries, what is working in those teams. And therefore, there's also a reverse side where we start becoming mindful of, say, time zones. Now, because we work across the globe, people don't realize
right,
that, it's late night, it's early morning. We have made phone calls at 6 in the morning saying, "Oh, I didn't realize you were in this country and I thought you were traveling to this country," right? So we
right,
also started becoming more mindful. So two things that works is one is expectation setting when you're looking at people coming on board, and second is being more mindful to double check, saying, "Hey, which country am I calling? What's the time in
right,
that country?" Uh, these are things that automatically make you more um, aligned, if I may
right,
say, in the
right.
process.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think as they say, the devil is in the details. So making sure that you're looking at the details is very, very important because you might miss out on things and it might really just sort of take everything for a turn otherwise.
True, true, true.
Um, okay, I think my next question to you would be that what is the connection with your experience? What is the connection between good leadership and a positive company culture? And how can leaders of today make sure that they create a kind of environment that their teams really, really enjoy working in and they themselves, really are proud to be a part of because leadership journey is really really hard and you tend to burn out a lot of times because leaders are constantly working 24/7. So what would you say is the connection between good leadership and positive company culture?
So I think today leadership, plays a very different role in different industry setups. I mean,
Right.
a leader in a stable company versus a leader in a high growth company versus a leader in a startup. The definition of leadership also tends to evolve or change in different types or industry setups. However, one thing that does not change, and for a
Hmm.
leader to know this, is very critical. There are three things that you need to focus on. The first thing is you need to have a vision as a leader, whether you like it or you don't like it, because people are looking up to you. You need to be the person who's giving that vision to the team.
Right.
Most leaders do not have a vision, and that becomes very uninspiring for the team because they're like, oh, this guy doesn't know. I don't know why is he a manager, or this guy doesn't know why is he a leader.
Right.
A lot of this happens. So first is you need to
Absolutely.
provide the vision. Second thing that does not change in all the industry types is give direction to your teams. I have seen a lot of leaders who put pressure on the teams to get the job done. And when they go back and ask them for help, they say, you figure it out. That's not my job. I have hired you. Now you have to get the job done, right?
Right.
Direction, giving direction to your team is very, very, very critical. Third thing that is my personal favorite is that you need to inspire your teams today. In a hyper connected world, right? If you're not inspiring enough, people will not like to follow you, and therefore
Right.
leadership is about how you are able to inspire, especially with Gen Z's coming into the workforce. So you got to work on yourself to become that inspiration. So these are three things that I tell any leader should have to create a good environment, to work in high pressure environment, to work in tight deadlines, to work 16 hours a day and still be motivated to go back to work next day. If you have these three qualities, I think mostly people will learn.
Absolutely. I think that's some really solid tips for the leaders watching this episode because I 100% agree that having that innate passion and then being able to translate it to your team where it inspires them is absolutely crucial being a leader. Otherwise, if you tend to, sort of get demotivated with time, your team can see that and in turn, it reflects in the work they produce as well. So I 100% agree with you. Um, I think my next question to you would be for companies that are growing really quickly, like TerraPay. What are some key HR strategies to make sure that the growth is sustainable and healthy in the long term? Because when companies scale really quickly, right, some things that might work, as is in all departments, some things and processes that might work for 50 people, let's say, might not be applicable to 500 people or 5,000 people down the line. So, what are some sustainable and healthy practices you establish to make sure that it is scalable in the long term?
This is again a good question because problems of scale are aplenty, and a lot of times scale creates uh, artificial pressure on the HR function to be able to quickly gel with the pace at which we are moving. Uh, uh, two things that have worked, for me in this scale journey. The first thing is I'm always open to people coming and feedback to me. A lot of times we see people become defensive when another department comes and gives feedback saying, "Hey, you're not doing this right. Can you relook at this or can you relook at that?" Right? I
Right,
have not been defensive at all. If somebody wants to give a feedback, I'll say welcome. I will take that feedback and see what I can do to implement it. So because I've been open to feedback, I've had so many people who've come to help me within the
right,
organization, outside the ecosystem, because they know that I'm seeking genuine advice to create an impact. So one is
right,
be open to feedback. I would say criticism as well, because a lot of times, people will tend to criticize you when something goes wrong. For example, and this is an example that I keep talking about. Um, because I operate from India, we are used to asking candidates, 10th, 12th degree, pay slips, Form 16s, some 10,000 documents to prove that they are genuine and they're valid, right? Now,
right,
this template is not possibly acceptable in a lot of countries, okay? But if I
right,
go with the same template and ask somebody in London saying, hey, can you give all of this? The guy is looking at me saying, are you even for real? I mean, is this a real organization? Am I joining, military services? What are you talking about, right? So,
right,
uh, a lot of these things came as surprises as we were growing, and because I
right.
was open to it, we could create templates for different zones, geographies, countries, and therefore, service them to the way they are used to being serviced. So one is,
Right.
be open to criticism or feedback. Second, and which is the most important thing, is challenge your own processes every 6 months. What may have
Right.
worked in the first 6 months may not necessarily work in the next 6 months. This is especially in the growing stage, right? If it's a stable organization, then a lot of things are already in place. So you then do your reviews periodically, which is once a year, once in 2 years, etc. But here, I had to relook at my processes every 6 months. So in three
Right.
years, I have relooked at my processes, 6 times, which has made me evolve incrementally in a lot of things. And today, when I look back, I say, "Oh my God, where we started and where we are is a totally
Right.
different thing." So
Right.
when you have that mindset of looking at things, structurally every 6 months, then you know that you got to change. Versus when you have a mindset, "Yeah, I have just set a process now in January. Why do I have to look at this in June? I
True.
look at it
Yeah.
next year," and keep struggling for the next 6 months when you're growing. So for all the leaders to grow, be open to feedback, be open to looking at your own processes that you've set, challenge them, and see if that needs to be changed or evolved, because that's what evolution in a fast-paced company is. Does it make sense?
Right. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. 100% it does. And it also sort of, really nicely flows into the next question I actually had for you when it comes to processes, especially is how can companies do a better job at listening to their employees and using that feedback to make things better? Because I do think we still, things are much evolving much better now, but we still live in a culture where, employees are still sometimes a little hesitant to give their honest feedback to their employers. So, how can you, what do you suggest companies can do to make sure that the employees' feelings are being heard and, if valid, are being incorporated into the culture as well?
This is like a question that keeps coming up in every forum, saying, "How do make employees feel heard?" Blah blah blah. Right? I have a slightly alternate view on this topic. Right? Um, my view is as follows: a lot of times when you go to employees saying, "Okay, give feedback, give feedback, give feedback," right? Even if there are no problems, because somebody is asking me to tell me a problem, I'll say, "Oh,
Hmm.
by the way, I don't like the color of this light.
Right,
Can it be mellowed down a bit?" Right? So
right,
it's not necessarily that every time you need to go and ask feedback and every time you need to hear the employee voices. Okay.
right,
And this may sound controversial, that why is an HR head saying that you should not listen? But my point is that don't create problems where they are not existing. And sometimes
right,
we go overboard in taking feedback and saying we will help you and we want this and we अरे नहीं चाहिए, don't take it, it's okay. You're also work in progress. When a house is being constructed, right, not everything is going to be spick and span and perfectly working. Even in your house today, one bulb may not be working and you will take 50 days to replace it because you're lazy and you don't want to go and replace that and you're adjusting, right? But when it comes to company, oh, this has to be perfect. Company is also a living being. I mean, it's evolving, it's growing, it will also become its perfect state. Having said
right,
that, if you were to take feedback from people, the best way for you to create an environment of people coming and giving you constructive feedback is implementing things and telling them, "Hey, you told us, we implemented, this is what is the result of it. Tell us more,"
right.
right? The minute you're able to close loop
Hmm.
on saying you told, we heard, we implemented, this is the impact. The minute you're able to do that loop closing, people will give you more feedback and more constructive feedback because they know that what they're saying is actually leading to credible action. Most of the
Right.
times, people say something after 5 years we implement saying you told, but by then a lot of things would have changed, right? That doesn't
Right.
make
The
sense.
problems would be different at that point.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think I definitely agree with the first part, the first thought that you shared with us, because I've seen that in a lot of general teamwork as well, right? Especially when you're a small team and you have a lot of generalists. And let's say I am given XYZ work that I need to do. And I know I need to work with these two people. If I go and ask for everyone's opinions about the same, the work just tends to like falter out because the opinion at that point is not necessary. It might be all
True.
right because out of habit we are used to asking someone, hey, what do you think? But it might not be necessary. So I completely
True.
agree with you there, 100%. I think that sort of brings me to my next question, which is looking ahead, how do you think things like work and employee well-being programs will change in the next few years? Like, how does the future look like? Because you work with so many companies and the setup might be, remote work and hybrid work and in-office work. How do you think employee well-being programs will shape up in the next few years?
I think we love to use these buzzwords of hybrid work and how the future will change. Let's rewind 5 years back. We didn't know how the next day is going to be when we were in between a pandemic, when everything
Right,
was, standstill, right? Uh, I I don't like this idea of, predicting future and saying how it's going to look. I don't know, right? All
right,
I can say, it should be logical. It should work for your company, and it should help your people grow. As simple as that.
right,
For example, at our company, we call people back to work in 2022, by the way, and we are full
right.
5 days work from office. Despite
Oh,
us being
okay.
so global, we're all 5 days work from office. Uh, uh, what it really does is it helps us collaborate better when teams are walking across the office and talking, right? The water cooler conversations are much more stronger, right? So it may work in say in our case, but it may not work in your case. So you take a call basis what your requirement is. Don't take a call because the world is doing something. That's as far as
Right,
hybrid work or office work or completely remote work is concerned. The call should be basis how the organization is equipped. As far as well-being is concerned, I think this is an area that's going to significantly gain importance over the course of next decade. People are increasingly going to look at how employee well-being is taken seriously.
right.
Up until now, there's a lot of lip service. For example, we gave gym memberships and we did Zumba class, we did meditation, we did desk yoga. All the tick in the box activities keep happening in a lot of our companies, including mine. I'm
Yeah,
guilty, of doing some of these things as well because that's the trend. But I believe that given how families are nuclear, support system is minuscule, stress in general is increasing, employee well-being is going to gain a lot of focus. Mindful living is going to gain a lot of focus. We are going to go back to our roots, much more stronger in the way our practices were, which are possibly our grandparents were following. Um, so the next decade is going to be very exciting and interesting in this space, where I believe that well-being is generally going to be, a lot in focus.
right, right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I genuinely agree with you that just doing employee being well-being programs for the sake of it and ticking a box is not enough, and it's not going to be enough moving forward. So, yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Vinay, for sharing such thoughtful and practical insights with us. And I truly, truly enjoyed our conversation. It's been amazing hearing your perspective on what it takes to build a resilient, human centered workplace. Before we let you go today, where can our listeners connect with you or follow your work if they would like to?
LinkedIn is where I'm available. They can just look up for me on LinkedIn. I write a lot of these things, by the way, on the platform, and everything that I've told, I would have written that as a story. So I'm one of those vocal HR folks that talks a lot of things that people shy away from saying. I believe all leaders need to be very practical and not sugar coated, not highly sophisticated. They'll have to start being more genuine, more human. That'll do a greater deal of service to people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. It was really great having you here. And thank you to our listeners for tuning into the 5 Day Snacks podcast. Until next time, remember to reflect, pause, and rethink for a better future. See you soon.